state trooper during a shootout that left one of her fellow activists dead. She was shot twice by police during the incident. In 1979, she managed to escape from jail, and she later fled to Cuba, where she received political asylum. She has long proclaimed her innocence. On Thursday, FBI Special Agent Aaron Ford spoke at a press conference announcing Shakur's placement on the most wanted terrorist list. He refers to Shakur as Joanne Chesimard, her original name.
And freely in Cuba, she continues to maintain and promote her terrorist ideology. She provides anti-U.S. government speeches espousing the Black Liberation Army message of revolution and terrorism. No person, no matter what his or her political or moral convictions are, is above the law. Joanne Chesimard is a domestic terrorist who murdered a law enforcement officer, execution style.
That's FBI Special Agent Aaron Ford. In a moment, we'll be joined by two guests, the scholar and activist Angela Davis, who faced her own murder trial decades ago, and Lennox Hines, Assata Shakur's longtime attorney for some 40 years. But first, we turn to Assata Shakur in her own words. In 1998, Democracy Now! Aired her reading an open letter to Pope John Paul II during his trip to Cuba. She wrote the message after New Jersey state troopers sent the Pope a letter asking him to call for her extradition.
My name is Assata Shakur, and I was born and raised in the United States. I am a descendant of Africans who were kidnapped and brought to the Americas as slaves. I spent my early childhood in the racist, segregated South. I later moved to the northern part of the country, where I realized that black people were equally victimized by racism and oppression. I grew up and became a political activist, participating in student struggles, the anti-war movement, and most of all, in the movement for the liberation of African Americans in the United States. I later joined the Black Panther Party, an organization that was targeted by the COINTELPRO program, a program that was set up by the Federal Bureau of Investigation to eliminate all political opposition to the U.S. government's policies, to destroy the black liberation movement in the United States, to discredit activists, and to eliminate potential leaders. Under the COINTELPRO program, many political activists were harassed, imprisoned, murdered, or otherwise neutralized. As a result of being targeted by COINTELPRO, I, like many other young people, was faced with the threat of prison, underground, exile, or death. The FBI, with the help of local police agencies, systematically fed false accusations and fake news articles to the press, accusing me and other activists of crimes we did not commit. Although in my case the charges were eventually dropped or I was eventually acquitted, the national and local police agencies created a situation where, based on their false accusations against me, any police officer could shoot me on sight. It was not until the Freedom of Information Act was passed in the mid-'70s that we began to see the scope of the United States government's persecution of political activists. At this point, I think that it is important to make one thing very clear. I have advocated, and I still advocate, revolutionary changes in the structure and in the principles that govern the United States. I advocate self-determination for my people and for all oppressed people inside the United States. I advocate an end to capitalist exploitation, the abolition of racist policies, the eradication of sexism, and the elimination of political repression. If that is a crime, then I am totally guilty. To make a long story short, I was captured in New Jersey in 1973. after being shot with both arms held in the air and then shot again from the back. I was left on the ground to die, and when I did not, I was taken to a local hospital where I was threatened, beaten, and tortured. In 1977, I was convicted in a trial that can only be described as a legal lynching. In 1979, I was able to escape with the aid of some of my fellow comrades. I saw this as a necessary step, not only because I was innocent of the charges against me, but because I knew that the racist legal system in the United States, I would receive no justice. I was also afraid that I would be murdered in prison. I later arrived in Cuba, where I am currently living in exile as a political refugee. The New Jersey State Police and other law enforcement officials say they want to see me brought to justice. But I would like to know what they mean by justice. Is torture justice? I was kept in solitary confinement for more than 2 years, mostly in men's prisons. Is that justice? My lawyers were threatened with imprisonment and imprisoned. Is that justice? I was tried by an all-white jury without even the pretext of impartiality and then sentenced to life in prison plus 33 years. Is that justice? Let me emphasize that justice for me is not the issue I am addressing here. It is justice for my people that is at stake. When my people receive justice, I am sure that I will receive it too.
That is an excerpt of a letter Assata Shakur read, an open letter to Pope John Paul II during his trip to Cuba in 1998. When we come back from break, we'll be joined by Assata Shakur's longtime attorney, Lennox Hines, and the scholar and activist, Angela Davis.
Welcome back, welcome back, welcome back. You're listening to The State of the City. Of course, that was Democracy Now!, or as I call it, Hypocrisy Now! Yesterday with Amy Goodman, but it featured, of course, excerpts from Assata Shakur in her own words, along with her attorney. I encourage many of you to go online. You can view it, listen to it, and watch it again in its entirety yesterday. And if time permits, we'll come back and give you more of that over the next few days. But the question is, where's the black media on Assata Shakur? Where's the black media talking about the counterintelligence program? And that's why I'm going to be honored to be joined by Dr. Powers, former FBI agent, author of the book Eyes to My Soul, The Rise and Decline of a Former FBI Agent or an FBI Agent, to talk about the counterintelligence program and how it worked and how it continues to work today in the black community, brown community, red community, yellow community, and white community, because they're still operating in the same ways today, except they're probably more wicked today than they were yesterday in terms of their policies and in terms of their principles against our organizations. And so what we're going to do now, as we begin to transition into the second hour, go to this quick musical break, then we're going to come back in and get into this message from the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan again, and have an opportunity to hear this interview that he did with Rock Newman, and throwing down the gauntlet and, again, throwing out the challenge to the Southern Poverty Law Center, the ADL, the 12 heads of the major Jewish, 12 presidents of the major Jewish organizations for a meeting and for a sit-down, or to have this debate and this discussion that's going to take place. So you should be aware that's what's going on in this time and what must be done in this time and what will be done. So let me go to this message and we'll be right back. Well, we will be right back, rather, with more of the State of the City. Listen to this message.
In the form of an oral polio vaccine by Dr. Hilary Kaprowski, who is currently the director of biovirology at Thomas Jefferson University in Philadelphia. Today, a child dies every minute of HIV/AIDS in sub-Saharan Africa. In the U.S., African Americans represent 49% of all new AIDS cases. The globe holders, population controllers, the AIDS makers, dark nation depopulators, the Contra trainers, American Nazi bankers, the tower bombers, right-wing Al-Qaeda sponsors, Hitler's accomplice, 9/11 mission accomplished. Free your conscience. In ghettos they kill the prophets, the juggernauts, the alphabet cops, the CIA, FBI, GI, the coca crops, imported to local blocks. The 5 years for the black to the month that the cracker got. A powder pot compared to a gram of rock. Got blacks at 50% of the prison pop. The whacking huts, the correction corporations, the International Planned Parenthood Federation, the forced abortion, forced sterilizations, the sons of Satan, Operation Depopulation. From 1924 to 1976, 32 states in the U.S. utilized eugenics programs to depopulate the country of so-called weak breeds who were downbreeding the American population. Some 65,000 black youth from public school districts throughout the country were given a biased IQ test. All who failed the test were sterilized against their or their parents' will. The diamond dealers, them choppers and baby killers, the oil drillers, Black Nation resource stealers, the truth concealers, suppression of true guerrillas, Patrice Lumumba, Nkrumah, Lauren Kabila, the people traders, poor population enslavers, the black/brown/yellow baby cremators, the black/brown/yellow unity haters, the red/white/blue liberty wavers, eugenicists, world imperialists, evolutionists, black womb pollutionists, the euthanizers, third world birth sterilizers, Nazi sympathizers, financiers and arms suppliers, the nuke igniters, the World Health Organizers, the virus writers, smallpox, Ebola splicers, the throne usurpers, the worst death deservers, the devil worship, more power for every murder. A 1996 expose by the San Jose Mercury News documented CIA involvement in a Nicaraguan drug ring which poured thousands of kilos of cocaine into Los Angeles African-American neighborhoods in the 1980s. Drug boss Danilo Blandon, now an informant for the DEA, acknowledged under oath the drugs for weapons deals with the CIA-sponsored Contras. The Club of Rome, World Bank, the Skull and Bones, Allah engraved in the Pope's throne, the camouflage, the right verse, left mirage, Bush and Kerry got naked to pledge in the same lodge. The Reagan years, the luminous presidents, ever since they've been facing the obelisk, the Kabbalists. Harry Potter is not a myth, this ain't on radio, but this shit. The war on drugs has been a war on poor people, particularly poor urban African-American men and women. It's well documented that police enforcement of the new harsh drug laws have been focused on low-level dealers in communities of color. Arrests of African-Americans have been about 5 times higher than arrests of whites, although whites and African-Americans use drugs at about the same rate. African-Americans have been in prison in numbers even more disproportionate than their relative arrest rates. It is estimated that in 1994, on any given day, 1 out of every 128 U.S. adults was incarcerated, while 1 out of every 17 African-American adult males was incarcerated. The differential in sentencing for powder and crack cocaine is one glaring example of institutionalized racism. About 90% of crack arrests are of African-Americans, while 75% of powder cocaine arrests are of whites. Under federal law, it takes only 5 grams of crack cocaine to trigger a 5-year mandatory minimum sentence, but it takes 500 grams of powder cocaine 100 times as much to trigger the same sentence for a white boy.